Life after a stroke can be very challenging. Many people face physical limitations, speech issues, and emotional changes. One of the most common emotional challenges is depression, which often appears in the months following a stroke. While doctors and families focus on physical healing, depression may quietly affect a person's life for years. Dr. Lu Liu and colleagues at King's College London, working with experts in public health, stroke medicine and epidemiology, set out to understand if depression that develops soon after a stroke impacts long-term recovery, health and quality of life over as much as 10 years. If early depression continues to affect people's lives years later, it would suggest that recognizing and treating depression quickly after a stroke could have lasting benefits for both mental and physical well-being. To explore this, the team of researchers used data from the South London Stroke Register, an ongoing study tracking individuals in London boroughs of Lambeth and Southwark since 1995, and continues to collect data today. This register included everyone in the area who has had a stroke, and researchers have been regularly gathering information about their health, mood, and daily life. For this study, they included 2,581 participants who had been evaluated for depression 3 months after their stroke. The study revealed that 918 individuals showed signs of depression at that point, based on a standard hospital questionnaire that assesses symptoms like low mood, hopelessness, and loss of interest. The researchers then followed these stroke survivors for up to 10 years, checking in regularly to note whether they were still alive, whether they had suffered another stroke, and how well they could perform daily activities like dressing, washing, cooking, or shopping. They also measured quality of life, focusing on both physical and mental health. They used statistical methods to make fair comparisons, while also considering other factors that might affect recovery, such as age, stroke severity, and other health issues. Importantly, the team looked not only at who had depression early on, but also at how that depression changed over time, whether people recovered, developed depression later, or experienced long-lasting symptoms. The results were striking. About a third of stroke survivors experienced depression within 3 months. Those with early depression were more likely to die during the 10-year period than those who were not depressed. Their risk of death was about 18% higher, even when factoring in age, stroke severity, and other health issues. However, early depression did not seem to increase the likelihood of having a second stroke. The main impacts of depression were seen in other areas of life. People who were depressed at 3 months were almost 3 times more likely to have lasting physical disabilities and nearly 3 times more likely to struggle with daily activities. Their reported quality of life was also much lower, both physically and mentally. On average, they scored about 6 points lower on physical well-being and 8 points lower on mental well-being compared to those without depression. The picture became clearer when researchers examined how depression changed over time. Some people who struggled with depression early on had recovered by the end of the first year. People whose depression improved within the first year tended to do better overall than those whose depression continued. They were more physically independent and reported a better quality of life. In other words, recovering from depression after a stroke was linked to meaningful improvements in everyday functioning and well-being. They even had lower risk of disability and better quality of life than people whose depression continued. In contrast, individuals whose depression lasted for 1 year or longer were more likely to die, have long-term disability, and report poorer well-being throughout the 10-year follow-up. This indicates that recovering from depression can make a significant difference, even if it takes time. These findings are important because they show that depression after a stroke is not just a short-term mood issue. It can impact someone's health and independence for years. But there is also hope. Individuals who receive help and recover from depression early can avoid many long-term risks. This suggests that mental health care should be considered essential in stroke rehabilitation, not a separate or secondary matter. Doctors, nurses, and rehabilitation teams should regularly check mood, have open discussions with patients and families about mental health, and ensure effective treatments like counselling, social support, or medication are available. The study also highlights how family members and caregivers play a crucial role in noticing mood changes and encouraging early assistance. The research has several strengths. It included a large and diverse group of participants from 2 London boroughs and followed them for a long period of time, up to 10 years. The study used established questionnaires to measure depression, disability, and quality of life, while carefully accounting for other factors that might influence outcomes. By examining how depression changed over time, the researchers demonstrated that it is not only the presence of depression that matters, but also whether individuals recover from it. However, as with all observational research, the findings should be interpreted cautiously. The study cannot prove that depression directly causes worse outcomes. It only shows that the two are closely linked. It is possible that people who were more severely affected by their stroke or who had less social support were both more likely to be depressed and to face worse long-term outcomes. Additionally, some information was missing because not every participant was followed for the entire 10 years. Depression was measured using a screening tool instead of a complete psychiatric interview, which means that mild or fluctuating cases may have been under or overestimated. Finally, because the study was conducted in South London, results might differ in other parts of the UK or in different healthcare systems. Despite these limitations, the message is clear. Depression after a stroke deserves serious attention. It is common, it can last for years, and if left untreated, it can affect survival and quality of life for a decade or more. The fact that individuals who recovered from depression within the first year had much better outcomes suggests there is a crucial window when effective treatment can lead to long-lasting benefits. Future research should aim to find the best ways to detect and treat post-stroke depression, explore the biological and social connections between mood and recovery, and test whether early interventions can improve not just mental health, but overall survival and independence. For stroke survivors and their families, this study offers an encouraging message. Addressing depression early can help create a better, longer, and more fulfilling life after a stroke.